Hello, my name's Colin Crithers, and I'm a student reporter and broadcaster at the University of Iowa. As a journalist, my job is to tell stories, while also balancing everything else going on in my life as a student. But no one tells our stories. So, my goal is to tell the stories of the student journalists, broadcasters, and storytellers all across the country. Let's walk the student beat. Welcome in. Today we are walking the student beat with Ben Holler of Indiana. Ben, I am very excited for this, but first, per usual, if you don't mind just introducing yourself and some of the journalistic outlets you've worked with.
Yeah, I'm very excited about this project, Colin. This is one that I think is very cool getting the stories out there and very happy to be on. So I'm going to be, now this is summer, so I'm going to be a senior at Indiana University. A lot of my work and experiences come in the play-by-play realm. So currently I am the co-sports director for our radio station our student radio station that broadcasts 9 different Indiana sports. And I have called games for all 9 of those sports since I have gotten to Indiana. I am currently this summer out on Cape Cod for the Cape Cod Baseball League as a play-by-play intern for the Falmouth Commodores. Um, that's been going on for about 4 weeks now. We're about halfway through that season, and it's been very fun experience. I was a play-by-play broadcaster for our flagship station for our baseball team, filling in for the main broadcaster the last couple of seasons. So I've got to travel with the team and stay with the team for the first, 5 or 6 weeks of the year for the baseball team, which has been a ton of fun. I've got experience on beats. I've done our student news station. I've done a football beat for them. I've covered basketball for one of our social media beats. Overall, just try to get as much experience as I can in different areas at Indiana.
Absolutely. We're going to dive into all of those here soon. But first, I want to ask about your start, especially in broadcasting. What was it that pulled you in, and how did you get that start?
Yeah, so it wasn't something that I picked up extremely early. Just a little background. Colin and I know each other because our high schools were two of the best, and in my opinion, better sports broadcast programs in the area, and two of the only broadcast programs in the area, which is the first thing that I was just fortunate that my school had a program. So it was sophomore year of high school for me. I'd played sports all growing up, basketball and football since first or third grade. Going into my sophomore year of high school, I decided I was going to be done with football, and I was scared because I had nothing to I didn't know what I was going to do. Playing sports takes up so much time, especially at the high school level. Once you stop playing it, it's like, what are you going to do with all that free time? How are you going to stay busy? Um, and we had a class that was kind of like the entry level to just media in general, any kinds of media. Um, some of it was written journalism, but a lot of it was called integrated media internship, and it was just a lot of editing videos together and producing podcasts, just those kinds of smaller level things. Our teacher for that is also the guy who ran our uh, sports broadcasting program, which was just a radio only program. It wasn't an actual radio station; it was just an online service. He was just like, we were talking one day, and I had just been on the football team, no longer on it, and he had asked me if I wanted to try just to do color for a couple games for the football season coming up, and I was like, yeah, that sounds fun, something I can do for Friday night. I had heard broadcasts my whole life, never really thought much of it as something that you could maybe have a career in. I did color for a couple games, and I had a ton of fun. I liked talking about football. I liked how just you have an audience. In high school it's obviously not a very huge one, but still you feel like you're making an impact. And then once I had a couple games of color under my belt, I tried play by play later in that season, and that was when ooh, this is fun. I mean, this is you're getting some of that adrenaline that you got playing. You really feel like you're a part of the game. And yeah, a few games in, I fell in love with it. um Rest of that year, that was the year that COVID eventually hit, because that was my sophomore year of high school. So it was like the 1920 year. Um, I basketball, still play basketball. So I was on the JV team my sophomore year. I would play in the JV game, take a quick shower, and then go call the varsity game a decent amount of times that year, and I had a ton of fun with that. Basketball is probably my favorite sport, that or baseball. COVID ended up canceling baseball, but after that sophomore year, when I got a few games under my belt, my junior and senior year, I knew that's what I wanted to do, and kind of kicked into a leadership role, and had a ton of fun with it. But again, just so fortunate that my high school had a program.
Yeah, good shot there with us meeting up a lot. You at Mason High School, me at Elder High School in the greater Cincinnati area. But obviously, you mentioned you fell in love with it there. But is that exactly what brought you to Indiana, or what geared you towards that school?
It was funny. I always joke like it was always Indiana for me. Back before I even started the broadcasting, I wanted to go into like sports management was what I was thinking at the time. And Indiana also has a really good sports management program. So I remember like you start looking not seriously, but just uh like eighth grade, freshman year, high school of just like schools that could potentially be on your radar, and it never really ends up being those schools. So I had a bunch of random schools on the list. I don't even remember, but I still remember Indiana was at the top of my list since like freshman year before I wanted to go into broadcasting. And it just so happened that once I got into sports broadcasting and everything, Indiana also had a great program. So I loved everything about it. The distance was great for me. It's 2.5 hours from Cincinnati, so it's close where you can come back pretty much anytime you want. But I'm also not going to school with like 100 other people from my high school. Um, it's also the thing I love about the program at Indiana so much is you can get experience as a freshman. I thought it was one of the best combinations of like there's some prestige there, and there's some really good broadcasters to learn from, and some really good professors, and a great program in that fact. But also, there's so many opportunities that like I got to call some soccer games my freshman year, and I know it a lot in women's basketball games, and I know at a lot of other schools that's just not how it works. And that's what one of their biggest pitches was. And once I got there, that reigned true.
Yeah, Indiana is very impressive. It's probably going to be a school I visit a few times for this podcast specifically. And we're going to jump around real quick just because you mentioned you're not going to school with too many guys from your high school. But what about Mason freshman of the year at Indiana? I'm pretty sure for baseball, right? Hogan?
That was Jake Hanley. So Hogan,
Yes, my bad, my bad.
no, you're totally good. We got a couple of freshmen had a very good year, but yes, Jake. I always laugh. We actually played on the same JV basketball team together
Hmm.
um, at Mason, and he is 2 years younger than me, but he committed to Indiana. We committed the same year, but he actually committed to Indiana a little bit before I did. So he always jokes how I'm always following him around. There's a lot of good stories there with Jake. He was the first baseball game I ever called, actually. So he's turned into just a hitter at Indiana, but he was a great two-way player at high school. I mean, his senior year, he was one of the best pitchers in the state as well. Um, he got the start. It was his first high school start because he was a freshman. I was a junior calling my first baseball game. He gave up, I think it was 6 earned in the first inning. And he recorded a third. He recorded one out, so we finished a third of an inning. And I always joke with him like, you almost made me want to quit baseball broadcasting after one game that I called it his. Obviously, it turns out he had an awesome career. At Mason was the Ohio Player of the Year his senior year. Um, yeah, I remember talking to the Indiana coach before he came in, just talking about the excitement that they had for him, and being someone that always was such a great defensive first baseman that was never going to be in the question. But there was a spot open up at first base this upcoming year, and they wanted someone who could just be sure-handed at first and a really solid first baseman, and that's what he was. And I don't know how much they expected offensively, and not because Jake hit over 400 in high school. It's just it's a really hard adjustment from high school to college, especially in the Big Ten. And he started the game on an 11 game hit streak in the first 11 games of his college career. And it was like, here we go again. Hey, they moved him up in the lineup, and he got pitched tougher, but he still produced. Ended up being the Big Ten Freshman of the Year. So, I mean, I've been calling his games for what's been, see, I didn't do it as junior, senior in high school, but 3 total years now, because a couple years in high school and now one in college, and excited to do it in the future. But he's a great kid, and I'm not surprised at all by what he's doing at Indiana.
Yeah, talk about making an adjustment look really easy for him. It looked like he was natural at the plate when they came up to Iowa. I
Mhm.
called game one of that series where
I will mention Iowa did win on a full walk off, but he looked real natural at the plate the whole time. And honestly, let's stick with the baseball thing for a second. If you can tell, it's my favorite sport. I've got like 90 things up there
Oh,
for
yeah,
baseball.
absolutely.
But you mentioned traveling with the team, the Coliseum games, and that was for their flagship station, correct?
Yeah, so it's a pretty cool opportunity. At Indiana, there are four schools on our flagship station. That's like different than our student radio, obviously.
Hmm.
Um, Football, men's basketball, women's basketball, baseball. The same broadcaster for women's basketball is also baseball. So there's about a month and a half crossover in those seasons. So about those 6 or 7 weeks while he's with women's basketball still, I get to fill in for him and call some baseball and travel with the team. And it just so happens that I mean, at Iowa, being a northern school in college baseball, the first few weeks are you get to make some pretty fun trips down south. So I've got to do some pretty fun trips, but overall, it's been a really fun experience.
What's been your favorite trip so far?
That's a good question. In terms of there's a couple. So UCLA was really fun a trip as a whole because we got a couple extra days for travel. So we went down Wednesday for a Friday, Saturday, Sunday series and stayed Sunday night. Didn't go back till Monday. So we got to do some pretty cool things, see some pretty fun things in UCLA. Didn't end up winning that series. Another cool one, just in terms of being a college baseball fan, is we played in the Frisco College Baseball Classic last season. So I got to go down to Frisco, and that's obviously one of the coolest regular season events for college baseball. We got to see some really good teams. Played Alabama, Dallas Baptist, and Arizona. In terms of games, we went down and swept Baylor last year, which that was a ton of fun. That was started to gain a lot of momentum. Um, this past season, we also had a pretty good weekend down in DeLand, Florida at Stetson. We went 3-1 in a round robin there. So there's been a lot of fun ones. Again, just the lucky at the fact that it's so cold up north in the beginning of the season, so we have to go down south. So I'm definitely not complaining about that.
That is a good advantage. I get some of the South schools gonna be like, oh, I get to stay there, but it's kind of nice to see both sides of it and be able to travel there, right?
I mean, yeah, it is like, and it's funny too because it's not always rainbows and whatever, but like our second weekend of the year, it was still like it was like the fourth weekend in February or the third weekend of February, or something like that. And we went down to Cary, North Carolina, which North Carolina in February still is pretty cold. So we played at the USA National Baseball Complex and just played like a round robin against like it was like Fordham, Harvard, and Northwestern, like a non-conference game against Northwestern, I think. And I remember that was freezing. And it is still like there's some schools you go to where it is still pretty cold. I went to Penn State this past year as well. That was our first Big Ten series, which in the Big Ten, your first Big Ten series now comes the first weekend of March. So
Hmm.
we were, in state college for the first weekend of March, and it was the real feel was like 38 degrees. But overall, it does make for some pretty good trips.
Yeah, good trips. But you mentioned like it's not always just the delight of just a travel. You're still there working. I'm sure some of the turnaround is pretty tough, for lack of better terms.
Yeah, so that was one of the toughest things I think academically I've been put through. Um, this past year was the toughest because we were on the road so much early in the year. When I started doing this, so I've done it for 2 years now. Last year, my sophomore year, a couple of those series that I had were home, so there wasn't as much traveling. I had 5 weekends this year. All five of them were on the road, and they came almost all back to back. It was four in a row. I had a weekend off, and then it was another one. So the first two weekends the first weekend we went down to Arizona and played Friday through Monday. We played 4 games, and we were done on Monday. So we flew home from Arizona on Monday night, and then we had to be back on the road early Thursday morning. So it was missing a lot of classes. I mean, I had to schedule I made sure I had no Thursday or Friday classes. But still, like I didn't get the athletic letter that the athletes do when missing classes. So there were a couple times where I would be gone from Thursday to Monday, get back Tuesday and Wednesday, and have to go to those classes while also doing some makeup work for other classes that I'd missed, and then leave again on Thursday morning. That part was tough. There was a little bit of time where I was like, I don't know how much longer I can do this, but I think once everything played out, I mean, you just got to do a lot of work on the road, but it definitely was challenging. One of the most challenging things I've done on the academic side of things, just strictly not being in class for that much time.
How would you say you best balance that being a student, but also going and calling these games?
Again, I think a lot of it is doing work on the road, and it's different too. Now that you're in your junior year, a lot of your classes are sports media classes, and those are classes that complete that like understand and will work around your schedule. But like, so I'm also getting a business minor, um, and like those business classes don't even know what I'm like talking about when I'm like trying to explain what I'm doing and why I'm missing class. So it, it's I think obviously you lose a decent amount of sleep, but I remember like those first few weeks, even if things were going fine, things were going terribly, I would try on those 2 or 3 days I was home. I would try to just meet with the professors and some of my toughest classes to just kind of make sure I was on track and doing everything I need. Um, that's the biggest thing between working or balancing the classes and the games part. The other part is just knowing that it's only 5 weeks, and once that's over, you can start to make up a lot of it. But in the end, it worked out pretty well. I mean, it wasn't nothing happened. I didn't fail any classes. My GPA isn't tanked because of it. Um, it's just you got to be willing to. You're not calling a game. You're not doing prep. That does not mean you can relax now.
No, not at all. But going back with like the traveling with the team part, just for clarification, were you traveling like, let's say they had a flight, were you on the same plane or did you take something on your own?
Yeah, so I was in the same travel party as the team. We have travel parties of like 30 or no, like 45. We'd travel like 32, and the coaching staff, 5 guys, and then a few managers, SID, and then I got to be part of the travel party.
Yeah, so when you were traveling with the team, something that I took from last summer when I was calling baseball with the Hamilton Joes, I traveled with them all across Ohio and Michigan, and being with the players and getting to know their stories, I felt made it easier for me to call games. So, what did you gain, I guess, from traveling from the team from a broadcast perspective than you would have just calling games back in Indiana?
Oh, it's a huge difference. So just as you were talking about, just get to know the players better, and it's a lot more. It's not just one dimensional. Like it takes a lot of time. Some of it is just having at least casual conversation at first, just so the players will trust you. Especially a lot of younger guys coming to college. I mean, they're scared sometimes. They don't know what information to give. They don't know who they're talking to. So I think just like being open and having a comfortable conversation, and just like, I mean, they're also like my classmates. Like to let them know that like we're the same age, we're trying to do the same thing, just a little bit different. Um, is one of the biggest things. And then once you're comfortable, I mean, a lot of them, some of them are much more open books than others. But I mean, in this Indiana team I've called for the last couple of years is filled with some really great guys, some really good characters, a lot of guys who are going to be in Major League Baseball coming up, and the draft coming up this weekend. So yeah, I just think that it's obviously getting those stories and getting to know the players a little bit more. A lot of it too is just being comfortable with the players for when you need to ask to do something. Knowing a player and having casual conversation with them a few times, and then having to do a pregame interview with them is so much easier, and they're so much more open than when you just haven't talked to anybody and you just have to grab them off the field the first time. So there's a lot of reasons. It's really nice, but I definitely think the player connection and impact and being around the players is one of the biggest.
Absolutely. And you mentioned a bunch of MLB prospects. I'm assuming Corbin Dickerson's going to be one of them. I don't know if Taylor would go this year, right? He's got one more year left.
So he'll go this year. So he's just
Oh,
draft eligible this year. He's someone I can not see coming back. He'll go late first round, early second round, hopefully late first round, even halfway to the first round. But anyway, yeah, he um is somebody that I probably pound for pound. I'm trying to think. Like I've called football at Indiana, basketball at Indiana now, and I'm not saying for opponents. Like I called a Caitlin Clark game a while ago, so that's just different. But in terms of like at Indiana, Devin Taylor's probably the most talented player I've broadcasted a game for in any sport. Um, it's just the he came in freshman year and it was just like it's kind of like what I was talking about with Jake Hanley, where it was like, all right, he's got some production at the bottom of the lineup, but they just keep moving him up, and the way they pitch him, it doesn't matter. I remember a game at Cincinnati. It was a hometown game for him, um, late in the year, his freshman year, and he had like an awkward swing at this breaking ball that was like below the zone. And I don't know if you know how you see baseball stadiums set up, but you got the basketball arena, fifth third in the right corner. He had like an awkward swing on a low breaking ball, and he just crushed the ball off of the halfway up the fifth third arena. And I remember his quote after the game. He was talking about, hey, he was kind of mad at himself because he got fooled on that pitch. And I'm like, dude, that was like your longest home run of the year. Like, that's just the kind of raw talent that he has. And I mean, it's such a cliche to say this, but like he really is one of the guys. Like anytime you go to the batting cages before a game, um, like he's always the first one in there. And like that's the cool thing too about it is like a lot of times those guys are guys who were good, but we're trying to get better and need improvement. Like he's one of the top three players in the Big Ten and was still doing that last year. I was very fortunate to call his games and excited to see what he does in the future. He's a guy I don't think he'll take much time to get from the minor leagues to a major league level. That's becoming a trend more and more now is quicker routes to making it up to the majors. But yeah, he's one of the best players I've ever broadcasted for. Corbin Dickerson will probably go top 3 rounds, I think is the projection right now. There's been a lot of them.
Yeah, no, they're gonna look really good. Devin Taylor is obviously, as you mentioned, one of the best players I've seen too. I played with him a little bit
Oh
at
yeah.
Maryland. It was like fall ball, and I'm sure he would not remember it because it was at the time when he was getting recruited by Indiana. He was an infielder still, and when
Yeah.
they got him, they're like, "Hey, we want you on the team full ride, but you're gonna go need to play in the outfield. That's where we have space for you." So he just transitioned his sophomore year of high school. Yeah, no, I guess going into his junior year of high school, actually going into the outfield. But yeah, I mean, obviously you couldn't really tell if you didn't know him before his college years and everything. But you've seen some more talent up in the Cape Cod League as well, which is probably one of the best summer collegiate leagues in the country. So tell me how you got involved there and how that's all been playing out for you.
Yeah, so that's one of the internships, the Cape Cod Baseball League that opens about as early as it possibly can. I remember I set my application like late August for it last year. It's just so competitive, and people are reaching out so early, and they're figuring out so early. I had an interview with a few teams. I remember going in though. I had told myself that obviously this is never going to happen for the best broadcaster in the world because of how competitive it is. But like in a hypothetical situation where I could pick any team I wanted, I said Falmouth and Katuitt were the two schools or two teams I really wanted to, because Falmouth is such a great setup. It's one of the best productions in the league, or the best production in the league. Katuitt's just such a great atmosphere. It's such a fun program or fun organization to be around, from what I'd heard. So we had a few meetings set up early September here and there, making a few rounds. And then I had a call Falmouth, and my first call, they offered me the job on the spot. And I was like, that's just not something I can turn down. I had told myself Falmouth is the one I wanted from the very beginning. And like I said, what makes Falmouth so special is it is we have a partnership with the community television station. So it is a full on like TV production. Like it is, we have like 11 interns all involved on the broadcast side of things. It looks great. The actual production is outstanding. And I've had a ton of fun with it so far. Like you said, the players obviously is just kind of a different level. It's all the guys you see in the top level of college baseball, and now they're all just playing for different teams out on the Cape. There's some fun stories too. Like the best player in the league so far is one of our guys who he's from Marshall. Um, had a very good season at Marshall. Very good. He hit 280, like 15 bombs. But like there's some SEC first teamers and ACC first teamers and all Americans in the Cape. So he kind of flew under the radar. I don't know how much people expected of him, and he was just a five-tool guy. He's a center fielder that hits for power. He can also play like all 9 positions in the field. He's been the best player in the Cape in the first 4 weeks, and his draft stock has risen a ton, and just got the transfer to Arkansas. Like like he just got so much just for performing 3.5, 4 weeks at Cape Cod and being the best player. And it's not just because of that. Obviously, like I said, had a great season at Marshall and is a very good baseball player. It's not a fluke or anything like that, but that's just the kind of exposure. And I think what it shows is just kind of the respect that people have for the league. His name is Micah New, and he's going to go at some point in the draft this weekend. Be interested to see what's going to happen after that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the spot. If you want to prove yourself, you want to get the eyes on you. It's prove it in the Cape. As you were saying, you don't have to just be only good there, but like it's just the time to get eyes on you. I guess question for you is if these guys get drafted this weekend, how does that adjust your roster for the team?
Yeah, so it's going to happen a lot. Every team's going to deal with it. Every single team will have a few players drafted. Now, in the MLB draft, it's different than any other draft. A lot of times, like you don't have to declare anything. So you can get drafted and then say, nah, I'm going to go back to college. Which that happens a decent amount already when you get to, I mean, it's 20 rounds. When you get to the second half of the draft, rounds 11 through 20, it happens a decent amount just because the signing bonuses are low and minor league contracts don't make much money. So it's going to happen even more this year in earlier rounds because of NIL.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, there are some SEC schools that are dishing out some serious money that if a guy goes in like the 7th round, when he'd usually definitely go to the league of the past, I don't know what's going to happen now because the money might be higher back at an SEC school. So it's going to be interesting compared to years past because of that one reason. I think we'll lose slightly less guys than we did in the past, but yeah, the rosters, I mean, you're going to see a lot of guys called up from different areas, get some new guys because each team will lose a few players, and that's just the reality of it. I mean, that's no surprise to anyone. That's just this is how it works.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, do they cycle in new players at all if they need to, or?
Yeah, so they will. They'll replace those guys' roster spots. And there's summer baseball with the Joes. I mean, it's a constant cycle from the very beginning of the season for different reasons. Pitch count limits, guys getting hurt, guys tweaking something slightly, and their college coach doesn't want them to make it any worse, so he calls them home. So it's no different than that. The finalized league roster, I think, is July 20th. So by the 20th, that just means whoever's on the team, whoever's on the roster at that time, those are the only guys who can play in the playoffs. Just so you don't have guys coming back just for the playoffs. But that's just the reality of the beast. Sometimes makes the broadcaster's job a little bit tougher, but you do get to see a lot of really good players, even if it's just for a little bit.
Oh, yeah, it is fun, or I guess interesting looking back at getting a new roster every single day, pretty much going, oh, it's a guy I don't know much about. Got to do my research real quick. But do you have any favorite moments from the broadcast this summer in the Cape Cod League?
Yeah. So my favorite game, definitely, we had a game against Chatham earlier this year. We've been struggling a little bit, but offensively at least. But we ended up, it was like a seesaw back and forth game that found that we won 9-7. I also remember that was a fun game because Jake had a really good game as well. He plays for Chatham. Jake Hanley, we were talking about earlier. My partners did a surprise sideline hit where they took pictures of us in playing high school basketball together and put it together, and that was a ton of fun. So it was just that, and seeing Jake perform like that, like I've called him play well so much in high school and so much in college. And then on top of it, it was a really fun game. I mean, we went down 5-1, I think, at one point, and Micah New had a couple of really big hits. In terms of specific moments, I feel like anytime Micah New does something, it's a ton of fun just because of how talented he is, and again how much his stock is just rising in the last 3.5 weeks, and the more he hits, the more it just proves that he is supposed to be there. Um, trying to think of specific moments. I think just the first game I called was like a pretty cool moment, and just the fact that you're there with a bunch of the college with all the college's best players. You're also there with all the college's best broadcasters too. Um, was a really cool moment, and that was another pretty good game against Brewster. That we blew 6-3 lead in the ninth, but
Yeah, I can think of because I've paid attention, followed along a little bit here and there, and I know a moment that I just have to bring up when you were doing sideline up there this summer. Without spoiling it too much, there was a certain bat you found from the team. If you want to bring it up,
yeah. So I remember. I don't know how I didn't know this. I feel like I'm pretty in tune with college baseball just because I covered it and everything like that, and especially knowing I was going to go to the Cape, try to stick up with some storylines. We have a first baseman, led the ACC in batting average this past year. He had 397 in the ACC. Is ridiculous. Ken Schmidt at Georgia Tech. And if you go to his Twitter bio, the first thing it says is, "Yes, I swing a hot dog bat." So I was just like, all right. I mean, it's just trying to have some fun. But the more like I researched it, because obviously that was kind of eye catching, the more I realized this was like a big thing from college this past year, that this, first baseman had a custom hot dog bat. And you have 40 games in a season. You can do sideline on the whatever you want to, just whatever story you want to tell. So I remember going up to Kent and asking about it, just about the backstory. And I thought the backstory was pretty funny about how it started. He was getting chewed out, absolutely chewed out in a film session at Georgia Tech. And his coach was making fun of him, or not really making fun of him, like yelling at him because he missed the cutoff and just saying, like, "Oh, here you go again," just sitting around probably thinking about hot dogs. And that was just like a heated moment that like everyone started laughing. And then he showed up a few weeks later with a custom hot dog bat with his name on it. And his coaches took that very lighthearted, thought it was funny. And went viral on social media, caught the attention of a lot of people, got him a brand deal with the bat company that he had the hot dog bat from. So I remember just talking about it, and I was like, I mean, he's a really nice, easygoing guy. I remember I was like, "Hey, I'm going to do a hit about this. Any chance, like, is there any chance?" Because they use wood bats, so this was kind of a shot in the dark. I was like, "Do you have the metal aluminum bat with you here in Falmouth?" He's like, "Oh yeah, it's in my car. I can grab it." So he let me use it for the hit, and that was a ton of fun. I remember walking around after the game, or not after the game, but after the hit, um, with the bat. The amount of kids coming up asking for it, or like if they can get a picture with it. It was so funny, and it would put me in a tough spot because I didn't know what to do because it was not my bat.
Mhm.
I did not give the bat away, so I stayed strong there. But that was that just some of those really random cool stories you get to tell with some of college's best players.
Well done on you. I know how those kids can kind of get you. This summer, I'm down with the Reds as a ball boy for them, and those kids can get aggressive, asking for like an
Oh
extra
my
ball or
goodness.
something.
Yeah, you've been a ball boy for a few years now. One of the more
Yeah,
talented ball boys for the Reds too.
I try. I try. I appreciate it. I try my best sometimes. No, some of those kids will. They make sure you hear them. Let me
Yeah,
tell you about
yeah.
it.
I feel like that is a job you have to have a lot of patience.
Yes, you got to make sure you are calm, collected, and yes, the patience is definitely key thing. Is I don't want to like panic at this one kid being like, "Oh, I want a ball," but then this other kid wants a ball, and then this other kid wants a ball. I think one of my favorite moments, 2 years ago, this kid came down, and what happens when one kid comes down, a bunch of other notice, and they come down and ask. But instead of just asking for a ball, he said, "If I beat you in rock, paper, scissors, can I get the next ball?" So I said, "You know what? Sure," because no other kids asked yet. So I play rock, paper, scissors with them, and I won. And the kid's like, "Okay," and went back. So it was fine. So then a new line comes down, and eventually I'm playing rock, paper, scissors with a few more
Oh,
kids. And there is a line about 7, 8 rows up of just kids waiting to play rock, paper, scissors. And I kid you not, this sounds fake, but I beat each and every single one of them. I don't
geez.
know how, so I didn't have to like promise them a ball or anything.
Remind me to never play rock paper scissors against you. That's a crazy story.
I don't think I've ever done that well in rock, paper, scissors at any other moment in my life, but there
Yeah,
it was clutch. It was clutch.
yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, again, You gotta have a lot of patience, a lot of kids talking to you.
You gotta be able to have fun with it here every so often, whatever you can with it. But I think the nice segue from the Cape Cod League is I saw the other day you got a shout out from Jeff Goodman, and those listening that don't know, he's the co-founder of the Field of 68. So how did that come about?
So okay, I'll give a bit more of a backstory. So, we're both from Cincinnati. I don't know what you were growing up, but it feels like everyone's either a Xavier or Cincinnati guy. I was a big Xavier fan growing up. So my whole family went to Xavier. My dad played baseball there. Like it was just a family thing. We had season tickets growing up. So I grew up a diehard Xavier basketball fan. We get to college. Field of 68's trying this thing where they're doing team specific podcasts, and they're having either like beat reporters at the school or student reporters at the school run these podcasts. So I did an Indiana one for a year, my sophomore year of college. And so I just got to know Jeff through that and worked with him through that. Then after my sophomore year, I wanted to break off and do a Xavier one because they didn't have one yet, so we wanted to start one, and we thought that'd be a great idea. We'd have a lot of access in the Xavier's athletic department. So I eventually broke, and the fact that like I started a new one, I thought was a really good sign. But he's just around a lot now that he's got a daughter at Indiana that's also in the sports media program, and he's like I said around a lot. So me working for him and then getting to know him pretty well through running a podcast for him, and they've given me some really cool opportunities with a chance to cover some games. Like I went to cover the Big East tournament this past season for that podcast, and it's been a ton of fun time. He is somebody who has helped my career immensely.
Yeah, and I think you can tell a lot of really cool stories to that too. Now, whether it's the Indiana side of it or Xavier's, what is one of the cooler stories you've been able to tell through that podcast?
There was a Xavier player who was in his sixth year last year. His name was Zach Fremantle. He he had not. So this past year was his sixth year. He had not played a single full season of college basketball. So all 5 years there was something going on, whether it was COVID, it was an injury, it was a suspension. I mean, literally everything under the sun. He just couldn't get a full year in. And even this year, he went down earlier in the year in the crosstown shootout against Cincinnati. It looked like it was going to be serious and that was going to be it. And he just never was going to be able to ride off into the sunset. They had made the tournament a couple of years when he was there, but each of the time that they did, he wasn't able to play. Had a speedy recovery last year and ended up getting back on the court and had a phenomenal season to end it. He scored in double figures every single game he played this past year. And I just got to do a sit down interview with him and talk about his experience. And I think it was just such a great, just different perspective of like enjoying the game. And also like one of the biggest things, the biggest parts of that story I was trying to tell was so many things went wrong. I mean, he went through two coaching changes at Xavier, and both times he stayed. Every time he got hurt, stayed. Every time something happened, he stayed. And just the fact that, the perspective of the love that he had for Xavier, and he didn't really think about going anywhere else. And also just being able to battle through everything, all the injuries that happened. It was a really fun story to tell. It was a really interesting one.
No, absolutely. And I think on the basketball track, since you mentioned this earlier, there's no way as a true Iowa student, Iowa fan, Iowa broadcaster that I can't bring up the Caitlin Clark game that you were able to call. So talk to me about that game and just what that experience was like.
Yeah, so that was my freshman year. I was calling. Let's put on. We have kind of broadcast teams with the student radio. So in the fall we have a football team, and then we have a soccer team, a men's basketball team, and a women's basketball team. So I was on a women's basketball team my freshman year, and that was the one of the games I really wanted because I knew it was going to be a cool atmosphere. Iowa women's basketball, obviously great. It was at a point. So that was Caitlin Clark's second to last year at Iowa. So it was a point when I'm trying to decide which games I wanted, where Caitlin Clark was very big, absolutely, but she wasn't like as big as she was now. Mm. But still, I felt like I had to call one of those games. I actually ended up being able to call both the home and away game versus Iowa, but I knew I wanted to make it to Carver Hawkeye at some point. Men's would be really cool, but men's was like struggling at that point. So I was like, it might even be cooler for a women's game just with how good their program is right now and how much the school really cares about it. So I that was one of the most fun games I got to call. And I was kind of sick for that game too. Like I didn't have my full voice for it. And I remember being pretty upset about that before it. But I'm broadcasting. Sometimes the adrenaline just kicks in, and you're able to find a second gear. And it was just an instant classic from the very start. Kept going back and forth. Caitlin Clark was having a great game. Mackenzie Holmes was having a great game. And then I think what happened was I think we made both free throws to go up. Indiana made both free throws go up two, but it was like this game is not over. Caitlin Clark's on the court, and there's so many situations like that in sports where a team's down by two, they have the ball, 5 or 6 seconds left, and there's just so much anticipation, and it just gets let down because the chances of a buzzer beater in that situation still aren't like insanely high. It felt like at that moment, it was like I knew what was going to happen. Like I could almost script out my call. Like I knew Caitlin Clark was getting the ball. I knew she was going to hit the shot. And that's literally exactly what happened. I mean, she just got around her defender. Well, she wasn't even that deep, that far out, but it was just a catch and shoot situation where they got to advance the ball in a timeout. And I knew if Caitlin Clark got the ball with any kind of room, I knew she was going to hit the shot, and that's what she did. And I thought I had a pretty good call of it. The cool thing about student radio is try to be unbiased as possible because you're just getting the experience. So got to act like I was very excited about that, and have a pretty fun call. But to this day, I've called a lot of cool games. That's one of my favorites for sure.
Yeah, no, I mean, either way, Caitlin Clark being there and watching a few more of her games, that you described it perfectly. You knew she was going to hit the shot in general with things. But you talk about student radio. You're going to be director for your student radio this year. So talk to me about what that looks like to people that might not know.
Yeah, so the way it works with Indiana, so our student radio station, sports is just a small part of it. Like it is a full 24/7 run, all pure student runs station. There's anything on it: music, news, talk shows, anything. And there's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes financially, all that kind of stuff. So we got a whole board of directors. It's about 20 people, and only two of those 20 people are the co-sports directors. So the biggest thing is just being the liaison between the sports program and the actual radio station to make sure we have the time we need, we have the resources we need, and have it blocked out and everything like that. Everyone on the board at WIUX is great. And then the other side of it is, you're the ones making the teams, sifting through applications, you're making the schedule, you're making some of those decisions. Also, the biggest part of it is just being on the clock, I think is what I'm trying to say. 24/7. There's two of us, so it feels like one of us has to be available to take a phone call at all times if there's a game going on. Just if there's anything that goes wrong with the equipment, if any of the broadcasters have a question, if something's going on, just have to be available to at least take a call, or sometimes even, drive up to the game or to the station and figure out what's going on. But it's a ton of fun. It's time consuming, but it's worth it. I mean, I've made, my best friends at Indiana working for this radio station, and it feels good to give back.
Absolutely. No, I can tell you from my own experiences, you can definitely make plenty of phone calls about equipment. One time I opened it up and was missing, I think, like the USB-C cable getting ready to call a game. So I had to call our radio director up. But yeah, I mean, I can also say I've made my best friends through everything I've done. And I think that's the cool side of it, is that you're not just there, like you're doing a job, and sure, you're a student as well, but it's the mesh of the two of them. And just, I guess, through your words and your perspective, we talked earlier about how you balance them, but how do you see the marriage between being a student and being a journalist and everything you've done in Indiana?
Yeah, it can be tough sometimes. Getting into my senior year, I feel like I've done a good job balancing it now, but a lot of it is just like we always make fun of. So my house, just for his backstory, at school, there's 5 of us. 4 of us are sports media. One of them is just a business kid that I knew from high school. We always joke about how we have opposite schedules. He has very tough classes. Our business school is awesome. We have sports media classes, which aren't the most challenging or time consuming. but we are always working on the weekends. He can do whatever he wants on the weekends. So we always joke how we just never see each other because we have opposite schedules where we're always home during the week, not doing much, and he's always doing stuff on the weekend. So balancing that on the weekend is pretty tough. But I think just the biggest thing is you're always trying to like never say no. That's always the funniest thing when you're getting advice from a lot of people who have done sports media for a while. They always say two things. They say one of two things. Half of the people who give advice say never say no to an opportunity. The other half of the people say learn how to say no to an opportunity and focus on that work life balance. And it's not black and white. I mean, there's so much more that goes into that. I think you got to pick and choose your battles. Sometimes you know that you're not going to be able to go to every party on Saturday night. But if there's one weekend you want to make sure you're free, that's the nice thing about being a student is sometimes there's more leniency if you want to have an off night or something like that. But it's a tough balance in terms of the work life balance. The other part of being a student reporter, student broadcaster, whatever it may be, is sometimes you don't get. It hasn't been a problem in Indiana. But what I've seen is sometimes they just don't get as much respect as like some of the full time reporters, and that's just some of the stuff. Like you want your stuff to be seen, but the number one goal is to get better at what you're doing and leave college with all the experience. I think just remembering that that's what it's all about is just strictly you yourself being the best you can be in terms of the sports media field once you leave college, and everything else while you're in college is not as important.
No, absolutely. And I don't know if I can do this in full justice without also bringing up the reporting side, because you've had some time as a reporter on TV as well. How does that mesh with everything else you do?
It honestly meshes well. It's so this year, both football and men's basketball, I had a chunk of games I called for the student radio station while also being a reporter. It makes the prep easier. You're following the team like the full season. Like I remember, so I covered football for a student TV station this year, which it's my second year doing it. I don't know if they could have had more drastically opposite years than they did from my sophomore year to my junior year this past season, Indiana football. Um, but I'll never love reporting as much as I love broadcasting, but it's just so much fun to be in there talking to the players and the coaches after games and just fully get the full scoop of what's going on and everything like that.
Absolutely. And I think whether it's on the reporting side or broadcast side, I got this question last night from a friend that I'm going to bring to you. Is there a favorite call specifically? I know we mentioned like favorite moments, favorite games, but like maybe a line that you said in a broadcast that just sticks with you.
It's a really good question. There was a call I had my freshman year when I was doing baseball for the student radio station, and it was the regional. It was like the second round of a regional. It was the winners bracket game. Indiana was playing Kentucky. It was a really good game. Kentucky was like a top 11 team in the country. Indiana was the 3 seed in the regional. And you go up 2-0 in those regionals, and like you're in a really good spot. We had this catcher who was hitting ninth, hitting like 247. Great defensive guy, but just, I mean, wasn't a huge hitter. He's actually the bullpen catcher for the Yankees right now. Pretty interestingly enough. And it wasn't a crazy call, but it was his name was Peter Cerruto, and it was the eighth inning. Felt like nothing was going offensively for Indiana. They were down 2, had 3 runners on base, and he had a 3-run home run. And I remember I just said Peter Cerruto, the hero. I thought that was a really fun call and a really fun moment. That again, sometimes the most unlikely heroes, but that was one of my favorites I've had.
I think it's a good line. I like that line a lot. I remember being at that game too, though, as a fan and everything. I think,
Oh yeah,
at least, maybe I think I was at that game as a fan.
yeah, that was one where they didn't end up winning they ended up losing 2 straight to Kentucky after that, and Kentucky won the regional. But that was really like they had some ups and downs that year, and they were playing really good baseball.
I mean, it's still a cool experience to be at the regional and everything. And they had a good season, just fell short right there. But I think something we've kind of danced around and mentioned in a few ways. If you were to describe student journalism to someone outside of it and try to describe like why it's important to be recognized, what would you tell that person?
I think it's just kind of like what everybody else is doing. I mean, it's very different. The way I always describe student journalism is like, we're going to college. Yeah, classes are great. We get a lot from classes, but a lot of it's just the extracurricular experience. And I think it is a major that I've seen in an area that I've seen that is the most, or that has more extracurricular, and the extracurricular is more important than really anything else. I don't know a ton about science and everything like that, but I truly think that it the experience is the number one thing that you could possibly get in student journalism. And look, if you're a huge sports fan, specifically a huge college sports fan, I would bet there's a lot more than you think of information, of media that you've gotten from sports media that you just think are full-time media. I mean, there's a lot of talented reporters that ended up getting great jobs right out of college. So I just think it's just a ton of people just trying to get experience, and something that experience is so important for.
Yeah, I mean, the experiences are always huge. You mentioned a lot of really cool ones you've had, and thinking about all of those, if you were to go back and tell yourself that sophomore, junior year of high school that you're now calling games in the Cape Cod League, what would you tell yourself?
First I would tell myself, like, I didn't even know that was possible. Like, I don't know how you even start that path, which is just, again, so fortunate I got to learn things later in high school. I think the biggest thing was I'd worried. I really worried after, not playing football, deciding not to play football, and then the next year deciding not to play basketball anymore. I've been really just felt like, am I just going to become, so lazy now and not do anything? Like, that was such a big part of me, that growing up was just playing sports 24/7. It was a huge part of my family. So I think going back and just telling myself that, like, making those decisions are the reasons that I've gotten all these opportunities, that, like, it's all going to work out in the end. And I think that's one of the biggest things I tell myself.
Absolutely. And I think the other good part about this, I mean, I know you're in a good spot with things and everything, but it never hurts, because what the important with student journalism, and for some kids, is getting recognized, getting seen. So a chance here for yourself to plug anything you want for people to go check out, see, watch, listen to after they listen to this podcast.
You'll see everything on my Twitter, at @big_Ben Howler. That's where pretty much everything goes. When I'm calling a game, when I'm putting out a piece of media, yeah, pretty much anything goes there. Highlights, play-by-play will go there as well. So that's the biggest thing. I think you can find everything there.
Absolutely. I'll make sure I link that where this is posted here on YouTube. But outside of that, got nothing else for you. And I'll make sure I tune in some more Cape Cod games and everything. But I appreciate you joining me today.
Yeah, Colin, I really appreciate everything you're doing. It's great with this whole podcast and everything. I think it's awesome work.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Make sure you check out all the links provided to follow along Ben and his journey and all of his work. He's really impressive on the mic, and on top of it, a great person. And shout out to him for giving me some advice when I've needed it along the way of my own journey. If you want to stay up to date with all upcoming episodes of The Student Beat, make sure to follow me on Twitter at C_Carithers33. We just walked The Student Beat. I'll see you next week for a brand new episode.